What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So now that we're a couple of months out from E3, there are a few companies people are looking at, hoping that they'll actually show up with something good. One company is Konami, and based on some more recent evidence, it looks like they actually might have some stuff to showcase that's not a pachinko machine. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony and PlayStation Plus, as they had a whole bunch of stuff to announce. That includes stuff from the PSP, and we'll also be taking a look at another 10-year deal from Microsoft. This with a company, though, that has cloud games on the Switch and of course led to all kinds of confusion. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Ghostwire Tokyo. This, of course, released last year, actually almost a year exactly now. I think that's next week on the PlayStation 5. And I thought it was a pretty good game. Definitely a very unique game from Tango Gameworks, and well, that's what you come to expect from them now. Look at Hi-Fi Rush. But we were waiting for it to come to Xbox, and that is happening here pretty soon. However, it also looks like it's coming with an update, which we can see this posted up over on Twitter, where they say new areas, new missions, new powers, new collectibles, new enemies, new roguelite mode. That's interesting. Ghostwire Tokyo's Spider Thread update launches April 12th on PS5, PC, and for the first time on Xbox Series X, S, and Xbox Game Pass. This, by the way, completely free update. They did clarify that in the replies. And while I've pretty much moved on from Ghostwire Tokyo, it is one of those situations where it's like a year later and I almost forget how to play the game. You jump into it and you gotta relearn it, spend like 10 or 15 minutes doing all that. But the thing with Ghostwire Tokyo is when I finished it, it did that thing where, hey, here's the rest of the stuff on the map, just go around and do the checklist. And I kind of fell out of it at that point. I felt like I got enough out of the game, but I will admit the roguelite mode, I'm curious how they pull that off and what new missions and collectibles they have, so maybe I'll pop in and check it out. At the very least, though, it's certainly worth a look on Game Pass if you have an Xbox Series and you've been waiting for it to show up on the platform. Also, speaking of updates, we had a bit of a random one that got announced. I wasn't really expecting it, but here it is over on Twitter from the Far Cry 6 or Far Cry game Twitter account, saying, let's celebrate the 5th anniversary of Far Cry 5 over the next 3 weeks. Celebrate the 5th anniversary with us. Stay tuned for what's to come, including a highly requested feature for next-gen consoles. So I assume this is them doing like kind of a quote-unquote next-generation patch. I say kind of because I don't know if they're going to go crazy, like all out on this update, but what I do think they'll do is have a 60 FPS mode applied to Far Cry 5 on the Xbox Series and PlayStation 5. Right now on the Xbox Series, you can have FPS boost, and that pushes it up, I believe, to 60 frames, but it's like at 1080p, so there is some trade-off there. Otherwise, you do 4K 30, and even then, it's missing many of the effects that like PC would get. So maybe they show up and say, here's a 60 FPS or an uncapped frame rate mode that goes along with 4K. Oh, and we'll add in some extra visual effects, maybe ray tracing, but I just think at the very least, they're going to have something ready to go that removes that 30 FPS frame limit, and really for the game, it feels significantly better at 60 FPS, so if they can do that, I think it would be awesome for Far Cry 5. Oh, and we did get that gameplay trailer for Atlas Fallen, and you can see some of it here. It's only like a minute and a half long. This is from Focus Entertainment. Again, the game is slated to release May 16th. That will be on the Xbox Series X, S, PC, and PlayStation 5. Some of the limited amounts, we'll say, of gameplay snippets that they had here, it looks good. It's an action RPG, again, from Focus Entertainment, and, you know, I'm curious. I'll check it out at the very least, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a bit on the podcast that week, but I don't know, something about this game where they didn't show off much gameplay at all before they opened up pre-orders, and then they show off maybe 30 seconds max here, and they're still talking about all kinds of other things you do outside of combat, but all they're showing is like a second or two of combat here and there, specifically with special moves that you have in it. So we'll see. Again, the premise of it, the setting, the visual style, the action, it all looks good, but we'll find out when the full game releases here in a couple of months. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Konami and their potential for actually stealing the show at E3. Well, I think it also depends on the potential for there being a PlayStation showcase ahead of E3 where maybe Konami says, this is where we're announcing a bunch of games. And it sounds strange now because Konami really hasn't been doing a lot of good stuff in gaming. We had Metal Gear Survive, which had people mostly just move on from the Metal Gear franchise completely. They did like this really bad Contra game as well. And then obviously they do a lot of pachinko machine stuff, gambling stuff, that sort of thing. And that's where a lot of their intellectual properties have gone to where they were prepping everyone for an announcement, and it was a Silent Hill slot machine, or it's a gambling machine with the Silent Hill intellectual property slapped on it. But now it appears Konami is getting serious with things. We saw that Silent Hill blowout, and there were two other intellectual properties that were part of this resurgence for Konami. One was Metal Gear Solid, and we've heard that Metal Gear Solid 3 is getting remade, and that could be something we see in the coming months at E3, or maybe during that Sony showcase that's being rumored potentially for May. The other is Castlevania. I'm very, very curious about how they would pull off Castlevania. I can picture Metal Gear Solid. We've already seen Silent Hill. How will they tackle Castlevania? Well, people have wondered if they'll even be doing that, and now we're starting to see more movement here in the background for that potential, which we can see posted up over on Gamatsu, spotting this happening March 7th in Japan. Konami Digital Entertainment filed a trademark for Project Zircon. They say the only connection between Konami and Zircon they were able to find is that Zircon appears as a jewel, the least valuable, in the Castlevania series. And I'll admit that that's an interesting kind of code name to give I guess a new Castlevania, the least valuable jewel, a game for it. And that did have me a little, okay, does that mean that this is like a cell phone Castlevania game? I do believe they are going to have even multiple Castlevania titles. And yeah, one of them could be an NFT cell phone project thing, but I do believe at least one of them will catch people's eye because it will be a legitimate shot at making a video game, not necessarily by Konami. I think they're doing something very smart with Silent Hill, where they're just looking around, who wants to make a Silent Hill game, all right? And a bunch of people show up, okay, great. We're gonna leverage intellectual property and just get out of the way. People can make it, we'll collect the checks, all that sort of stuff, right? I hope they do the same thing here with Castlevania because I feel like they could pull off both a 2D Castlevania and a 3D Castlevania, and to be honest, probably charge full price for both. I know the 2D genre is generally viewed as being worth less than 3D, but Metroid Dread did pretty well, and I feel like Castlevania, if there's a legitimate effort made, that it could actually catch on and make some money and be fairly successful even as a 2D game. I know people did like Lords of Shadow, I believe the first one. I don't think the second one was as good. The Nintendo 64 3D games, kind of put them aside. Kind of the same with the PS2, right? Lords of Shadow mostly. So I hope that there is a quote-unquote Castlevania blowout in the future, and seeing trademarks like these just give me hope. But we're a few months out from E3 and a few months out from the potential for an E3 or a PlayStation pre-E3 showcase, so here's hoping Konami has plans somewhere in there. Next up, let's talk about PlayStation Plus and a bunch of games going into the extra and premium tiers. I've said for a while that I think extra is probably the sweet spot. There's a lot of value there. Sony keeps adding game after game after game in, and they're doing that once again for March. We can see this over on PlayStation Blog. These titles will be available starting Tuesday, March 21st, so next week. This covers extra and premium tiers, as we will get into some of the legacy systems here later on. But we'll start with Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection. This, of course, being Uncharted 4 and Uncharted Lost Legacy, mostly just remastered, as they say, in stunning detail for the PS5 with improved visuals and frame rate. We also have Chia, that is just launching directly into the service, this being a brand new title. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Extraction. Didn't like it myself, but it's a 3-player tactical co-op first-person shooter where you sort of go into these, as they say, extraction points and try to complete different objectives while fighting off these alien-looking flood things. Ghostwire Tokyo also dropping in there. We just mentioned it is heading to Xbox next month, but it will be going into PlayStation Plus starting next week. Life is Strange True Colors, Immortals Phoenix Rising, Life is Strange 2, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. That's an interesting one to drop in there. I mean, for Dragon Ball Z fans specifically, I'm sure you've probably already played this, but it is, I guess, a different take on just making a Dragon Ball Z game, as it does have that action RPG kind of element to it, while also making you fly around and collect orbs, and kind of, for some reason, mimicking Superman 64 at times. Street Fighter V Champion Edition, Untitled Goose Game, Final Fantasy Type 0 HD, which, by the way, is one of the other mature-rated Final Fantasy games. Rage 2, Neo The World Ends With You. That's a good one to put in there just to get people maybe more aware of The World Ends With You, kind of that franchise. And then we have Haven. Moving over to the PlayStation Plus premium tier with the classics, we have Ridge Racer Type 4, that on the PS1. Ape Academy 2, which they originally labeled Ape Escape 2 by accident and then went back and fixed it, so that kind of gives you context as to what that title is there. And then Siphon Filter Dark Mirror on the PSP. I said before, hey, I'd like to see more PlayStation portable games getting dropped into this service, and here we have Siphon Filter and Ape Academy 2. Siphon Filter in particular, Dark Mirror, that's actually a pretty good game. I know it was really, for its time, I'm sure it was a good game because I'll probably play it here and be like, oh, okay, this hasn't aged the best, but it was pretty cool to see that on a portable system back then. Overall, though, looking up and down the list of editions here, not a bad month, I would say, for PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium. That actually follows up a solid month from February. In fact, it's been a good start to the year overall for Sony and their subscription service. My only thing now is I'm hoping we start seeing PlayStation 2 games go into the service. That's the biggest weak point right now when it comes to the legacy content, as we have had at least PSP and PS1 games get added in. They've done PS4 games that were PS2 remasters, and I think that's kind of how they're trying to skirt around it right now. I just want them to drop in a PS2 game. Okay, here it is. It's not been in previous PlayStation Now services, nothing like that. It's a serious effort, trophy sport, all these different parts, right? So hopefully that's something they have on deck maybe in a month or two, because otherwise, Extra, definitely, and Premium starting to shape up to be a pretty good value. Next up, let's talk about another 10-year deal that Microsoft has made for Call of Duty, and this obviously predicated on the idea that their deal goes through to acquire Activision Blizzard, and I talked about this yesterday because they announced another deal then, and a lot of this is posturing and them attempting to get the regulators' attention and approval, showing, hey, we're willing to play ball with any of these other companies, specifically cloud-based companies. That's obviously something that regulators have brought up, and Microsoft's looking around. Who wants a deal? Anyone. And, well, we can see this posted up by Phil Spencer, where he says, Microsoft and, I'm going to say Ubisoft, a leading cloud gaming provider, has signed a 10-year partnership to stream Xbox PC games as well as Activision Blizzard titles after the acquisition closes. Our commitment is to give more players more choice. Now, if you're unaware, Ubisoft is actually the cloud gaming, like the streaming technology is used right now on the Switch for titles like Control or Resident Evil Village, and this obviously got people wondering, wait a minute, is that how Call of Duty is going to come to the Switch? I can't rule it out. I mean, it's possible, but they definitely talked to regulators, and I think Phil Spencer even mentioned different ways. No, we're actually bringing it to the platform that we say we're going to bring it to natively. We're not going to try to skirt the line here and oh wait, no, we're streaming it from a data center PC that we have set up. It sounds like they're going to take a legitimate shot at getting it on the Switch. We even saw their explanation was Activision is very good at optimizing games for lesser hardware, in their own words there. So I think they'll get at least one native version on the current Switch that you may own now. After that, I think they're on to the next generation device from Nintendo that will, of course, give them much more headroom, I'm sure. But this just continues to add into their strategy with regulators, and that they are trying to convince them that they're not going to wall off Call of Duty from the entire industry, and that includes cloud streaming, so NVIDIA, and we see here with Ubisoft, and not with other platforms like with Nintendo and Sony. What'll happen after 10 years? Hard to say, because 10-year deals, it sounds like a long time now, but in the business world, it might as well be next week or something, so at least for now, we're going to see maybe other Activision Blizzard games head to the Switch through this streaming service, as it will be opened up to Ubisoft. So if this deal goes through, as I still think it will, probably get more traction on it heading into April and May ahead of that June expected closing time, then maybe we can see all kinds of random stuff show up from Activision Blizzard with Ubisoft on the Switch streaming, just not Call of Duty, at least according to Microsoft. They're going to take a serious shot at getting that on the platform natively. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a new controller that was announced yesterday, and this is for the original Xbox. It sounds weird, I know, but have you ever looked around at controllers for the original Xbox that's not wired? It's not a great market right now. Not a lot of choices, and the ones that are there just look cheap and like junk. Well, we can see this posted up over on Retro Fighters. This is the Hunter controller. It works with the original Xbox, the Switch, and the PC. And in fact, for the original Xbox, you have a little like dongle that you plug into the controller port like the old days, and it will connect to that completely. This has 2.4 gigahertz wireless technology for low latency support. It's compatible with the Xbox, Switch, and PC. Hall effect analog sticks. So while the jury's still out on the longevity of some of these controllers using it, because we could be looking at years before we see any kind of drifting, they say there's still no drifting ever. It does have wireless rumble capability. You can see the white and black buttons added in there, obviously, to go along with the original Xbox. They say precise and accurate D-pad. Gotta see that, though, in person. It can't really be worse than the Xbox D-pad from 2001. That Duke controller, even the S-Type, wasn't the greatest. Still retains those pressure-sensitive buttons, has a wireless range of over 30 feet, battery life just over 10 hours, and yes, USB-C charging. So I'm pretty excited about this. I have an original Xbox that has HDMI out. I did the entire modification, and it sounds like there's a lot of stuff happening right now in the homebrew market for that Xbox. We're basically replacing the entire operating system in BIOS, so the sky is the limit here soon. But that controller has been a serious weak point for the Xbox. So finally seeing a controller like this show up on the market is great. I'm hoping that other third parties also start doing more for the original Xbox. But for now, I'll check this one out, and I'm sure we'll do a whole video here going over it, my thoughts on it, and of course, tearing it down. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, if Castlevania made a return this year, would you rather see a 2D or 3D game? Look at 71% saying 2D. Only 29% saying 3D. I see some people saying both, and I mean, yeah, that'd be the best case scenario, but if you had to pick one, I should have put in there if it's full price, because I do see people have pause when they see a 2D game and the $6 price tag is right next to it. But for me, if I get a solid 10 hours out of a 2D game, and I get a solid 10 hours out of a 3D game, to me, it's basically the same. It's the enjoyment you're getting out of a title, and it doesn't really necessarily matter if it's 3D or 2D to reflect on that price. But I know that's not the same for everyone, and in fact, it seems more people would like a 2D game. Maybe something in the vein of what we had with Symphony of the Night. I think that would definitely turn some heads at E3, so come on, Konami, make it happen. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Czar saying, really hoping the Link system will work from Game Boy to N64 to Pokemon Stadium, and then Metroid Fusion to Metroid Prime to unlock the Fusion Suit. So I will tell you, I believe you will see transfer pack support coming to the Nintendo Switch online service within those applications. N64, Game Boy, all of that, right? I don't know if you'll see it outside of the application. You're saying Metroid Prime or Metroid Fusion working with Prime, which did have connectivity there. I think it'd be cool if Nintendo tried it, because it would be a way for them to link a single player game to their Nintendo Switch online service that they would like to sell to more people. But I don't know the logistics around that, or if that's something Nintendo would even attempt. It'd be cool, and Nintendo's a weird company, so maybe they'll try that. I mean, it's a strange thing, but you never know with Nintendo. They have done some strange things, sometimes bad, but also sometimes good. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today, whereas Konami and Castlevania. Do you think they're actually going to have a new game here in the next couple of months to show off at a PlayStation showcase or at E3? And then also about Microsoft giving out 10-year deals all over the place. Who do you think they're going to give one to next? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.